Hey folks, thanks for joining us. Just gonna wait till maybe 6:05, 6:06, 6:07, just so we can get as many people as possible into this Zoom room. I know folks are gonna have plenty of questions afterwards, so want to make sure we have as many people as possible to begin as we can. So we're going to wait a few more minutes before we start. But, thank you for joining. So, sit back, relax, and wait a few minutes. We'll really appreciate your patience. Hello, everyone to those who just entered. We're gonna wait a few minutes. We're gonna wait till like 6:05. Just to get as many people as possible into this Zoom room. I did send a reminder email earlier this afternoon, so hopefully folks got that. But yeah, like I said, sit back, relax, wait till like 6:05, 6:06, and we'll get the show started. So thank you so much for joining us. All right, still waiting for folks to come in. We're gonna wait a couple more minutes. All right, folks, we're gonna get started in about a minute. So thanks a lot for, sitting back and relaxing as we've waited for folks to enter the room. But in the meantime, I'll expose myself. um, so yeah, honestly, we can get started right now. If people get into the room, that's going to be great. But before I even remotely get started, I need to say thank you to, Assemblywoman Chantel Jackson, as well as everyone on her staff. Sade, you played a really big role in making this happen. So thank you. I think I saw someone else affiliated with the office in the Zoom room as well. Want to thank you as well. I don't know if any of you want to say any words, but you can feel free to get off mute and say any words. But I just want to say thank you for this opportunity to talk to more of the folks in your district. So yeah.
Well, good evening, everyone. It's Assemblymember Chantel Jackson on the go, but had to absolutely step in and say hello, good evening, buenos noches. I think it's still morning. Thank you for coming and having this conversation about Citizens Committee and the great work that they do with small organizations. They fill the gap. They fill the gap that we need. Government tries to do a lot, and we don't always meet the mark. And Citizens Committee come in and they help beautify neighborhoods with small grants. They help out small businesses, and I'm just really grateful for all the work that they do. And I don't need to tell you everything that they do because they're going to do that, and they're going to do it much better than I am. My job is to make sure that the people in my community are fully aware that Citizens Committee exists and how we can get access to the funding that is there for you all. So thank you all. Use the chat. Let's have a lively conversation and let's see where the money is. Thank you, Carlos. And don't ever say, let me expose myself on a that's a full pause. That's a full pause.
I love the vibe. I love the vibe.
What?
I saw your vibe during the caucus this weekend.
Yes,
so
yes, sir.
so I
We had a great
appreciate all
time.
the Bronx love. So
Absolutely. All right, kick it off. Have fun, guys, and let's learn some stuff.
absolutely.
Use the chat. Get active in the chat.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Assemblywoman. I really appreciate you. Just to start off, my name is Carlos Santiago. I am the programs associate and archivist at Citizens NYC. So I play a role in doing, the outreach to grantee partners and applicants, but I also play a role in, reviewing the grants. So basically, all of the information that you'll be getting from me is coming from a really good source. So that's one of the hats that I wear. The other hat, the archivist hat. I play a really big role in preserving the history of Citizens NYC, which I'll get to in a few moments. But the whole point of this particular, info session is to talk about the 2024 Community Leaders Grant and 2024 Neighborhood Business Grant. So that's basically what all of this is going to be about. So today's agenda. So we're going to talk about, to start out, what Citizens NYC is, what we do, and what our impact looks like. Then we'll transition into talking about the eligibility requirements for both the Community Leaders Grant and Neighborhood Business Grant. So in that section, you're essentially going to be able to know whether or not these opportunities are a good fit for you. Then we'll talk about the grant cycle. So once you end up applying for the grant, what can you expect in the ensuing months? That's what we'll basically get into in that particular section. Then we will talk about grant writing best practices. So I'm going to show you what our criteria is when we're evaluating any given community leader grant or neighborhood business grant application, which will put us in a really good position to start talking about sample application responses, right? So you're going to be able to see in real time and on paper, basically, what we expect to see in a quality application. And of course, there's going to be plenty of time for question and answer. And at the end, I'm going to ask y'all to do a very quick eval just to tell me how I did. And yeah, let's get started. So, Citizens Committee for New York City. Right here on the slide, it says that our mission is to help New Yorkers come together and improve the quality of life in their neighborhoods. And while that is true, the question is, well, how did we get here? Well, the 1970s was a very tumultuous time in New York City, especially financially. We were essentially on the verge of declaring bankruptcy as a city under the mayoral administration of Abraham Beame. There were many program cuts that were taking place citywide that were devastating residents, pretty much throughout the city. So, Citizens Committee for New York City was founded by Osborne Elliott, a journalist, and he basically heeded a call and wrote an article that was disseminated through a bunch of newspapers, basically imploring New Yorkers to fill in the gap that they can save their city, right? If they roll up their sleeves to do something for their neighbors, Citizens NYC is going to have a micro grant for them in order to support them in their efforts, whether it's establishing and managing a community garden, putting on free programs for children and seniors, whatever your community initiative is, Citizens NYC is willing to support it. So we've been doing this work since 1975, and we are the oldest micro grant foundation in the nation. And we continue our legacy through our grant programs, which, like I said, is the Community Leaders Grant and the Neighborhood Business Grant. So pretty much citywide, what we end up getting are 2,000 applications. So together, Community Leaders Grant and Neighborhood Business Grant, we get 2,000 applications per year typically, and that's what we got in 2023. Of those 2,000, 350 were awarded, totaling $750,000. So that was about 200 plus community leaders grant winners and over 100 neighborhood business grant winners. And a really cool stat here is that 66% of our community leaders grant applicants and grantees are volunteers, which tells you that we're getting to the very grassroots of the work that needs to be done across the city. And of the 51 city council districts, we have at least one project in each one, which tells you that we're trying to reach New Yorkers where they are as they're identifying issues that their community group or their business can address. So let's get into the nitty-gritty, shall we? The Community Leaders Grant and the eligibility requirements. So we provide grants for up to $3,000, and that's very important to note here, up to $3,000. So you can get anything up to that amount. So you can get $1,500, $2,500, $1,700, so on and so forth. But just keep that in mind. It's for up to $3,000. The criteria is that you have to be located within New York City and serving New Yorkers. You have to be a group of 2 or more people, and that's one of the amazing things about this grant, folks. You can literally be a group of 2 or more people with an idea to do something for your neighbors, and you can apply for this grant. You don't need a 501c3. Like, this grant is meant to be accessible. But if you happen to have the 501c3, you can apply if your org has a budget under $150,000. So that's kind of the budget cap for that. Schools, both public and private, can apply for grants as well. So they don't have to worry about a particular budget cap in their instances. They can just apply. And also in those cases, in the cases of schools, you can actually get youth to apply with you. So if you're a teacher or a PTA coordinator and you know a student that has a really awesome project, you can put them as your secondary contact in the application, and you can basically just put your stuff as the primary, as the primary contact, and you can submit an application. That's perfectly okay. Like, we love getting youth involved in these kinds of things. So feel free to encourage them to, get involved in the process. And I will later on give my contact info. So if they ever want to reach out, they can. So, for the community leaders grant, projects must demonstrate community engagement, and you can apply for multiple projects. And what does that mean? Like in the case of a school, like you can have a mural project, right? So you can submit one application for that. Or, hey, I thought of this really good idea about recess and having really good recess programming. I want to submit an application for that. And you can do that too, so long as you submit separate application for each project idea. In the case of a community garden, the example that I like to give is, someone communicated to us, hey, the floods in New York City have been absurd over the past few years. It has been affecting our ability to feed our neighbors healthy food. So we need to install a irrigation system so that we can survive these types of things much easier, right? So that was one application. And then the other application they submitted was, hey, like there's all this space surrounding the garden that we don't necessarily use. How about we put a stage and all this other stuff here to make it more inviting, to bring in entertainers, to, to present to the community, have resource fairs, things of the sorts. Those ended up being two separate applications. So if you have more than one idea, go ahead and submit an application for it. I always get the question, hey, Carlos, is there a limit to how many I can submit for the community leaders grant? No, you can submit as many, project ideas as you want, so long as you submit separate applications for them. So I hope that makes sense for folks. There's going to be enough time for questions later, but I hope that's clear. You can submit for more than one project for the community leaders grant. As for more eligibility requirements, fraternal and partisan organizations are ineligible. Chapters or affiliates of a larger organization are ineligible. And of course, individuals are ineligible. It has to be a group of two or more people engaged in community work. All right, the neighborhood business grant. So we provide, again, these are grants for up to $5,000. And the main criteria here is that you have to be located within New York City. You have to have 10 or fewer employees, and you need to be in operation by January 2020. And one of the most common questions I get is, Carlos, are you guys super strict about January 2020? Like, am I still eligible if if I was established in March 2020 or November 2020? What I tell folks, if you were in operation at any point by 2020, you can apply. You just need to be very careful that when you are applying on our website on citizensnyc.org, when you do hit apply, you're going to do an eligibility questionnaire. And one of the questions is going to be, has your business been in operation since, by January 2020? You have to make sure you answer yes to that question, because if you answer no, you'll end up getting kicked out of the form. Don't worry, you're still going to be able to access it, but you're going to have to do the whole form over again. So just to avoid that nuisance and having to use another browser, open another tab, so on and so forth, let's just avoid that and just make sure you answer yes to that question, and you should be fine. The third dark bullet point here, demonstrate element of community engagement. While that's the third bullet point here, I want to say that is the most important thing regarding the neighborhood business grant, because this is what makes it unique. We're supporting businesses that have community initiatives. And what does that mean, right? So let me give you some examples. One example is from a fitness business in Lower Manhattan that is founded by a formerly incarcerated individual. And this person wrote in their application like, hey, I serve time and it is ridiculously difficult for me to find a job. and not only for me, but people with my experience who have been incarcerated before are having a very hard time finding a job after serving time, and also having a hard time finding community. So he ended up starting this fitness business called Conbody, and he, knowing that, it's very hard for formerly incarcerated people to get jobs, he ends up hiring um, these folks to be trainers. And not only that, he's inviting other people from this experience to train with them. And with the 10 or fewer employees that he has, as well as the 100+ clients that he has, it's one of the amazing stats that they reveal to us is that there's a 0% recidivism rate, right? No one's going back to jail, which is telling you that this need for community amongst these folks, this is working. But also they're addressing a very real issue of, like, it's very hard for these folks to find jobs. And here I am as a business providing them with opportunity. So that's one example. Another example is of a business that was communicating to us, hey, our block is ridiculously dirty. And this person's like, no, 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 you don't understand. It's not just dirty like how we New Yorkers know dirty. No, like, it's dirty to the point where, like, they feel like it's affecting their business and the business and the other businesses on the block. So what this person decided to do was to gather a whole bunch of people to clean the block regularly. But not only that, he invited artists from the community to come in and create murals for the other businesses on the block so that they look more appealing to customers on the clean streets, right? The now clean streets. So that's another example of a business detecting an issue, and using their business as a vehicle to help their neighbors. Another example of a fitness business, I remember someone in Staten Island telling me, I have a fitness business, but I don't really know, like, if I'm helping the community or have a community initiative. And after a conversation with her, she basically told me that she has this mentorship program where she helps high school students with, their fitness and nutrition goals, but also helps mentor them through the college process. So I'm like, how is that not community oriented? Like, that sounds like community oriented work to me, right? So it's things like that that we're trying to support when it comes to the neighborhood business grant. And we're the funds, we want them to be used to facilitate community initiatives and community engagement. So in terms of what you give us in the application, you have to provide an expected current budget and proof of ownership. Funds cannot be used for overhead, so rent, utilities, taxes, insurance, payroll, things like that cannot be used. The grant funds cannot be used for that. And you have to keep in mind, this isn't like the community leaders grant where you can submit more than one application. In this case, for the neighborhood business grant, you can only submit one application per year. And yeah, that's just the case for this particular grant. I also, a very common question that I get is, okay, is there a way that I can apply to both grants? And the answer to that question is, it depends. Usually not, but it depends. There are certain businesses that have nonprofit arms that technically could also apply for the community leaders grant, but they have to make sure that that nonprofit arm has a budget under $150,000. So that's another, that's a way that folks can apply for both. Or if you're like a business, right, and are interested in a particular issue that you want to address, insecurity, just as an example, um, you can hold on 1 second. I'm sorry, folks. My internet is timing out a little bit. But where was I? Actually, I just lost my train of thought. um, I forgot what oh yeah, in terms of applying for both the grants. Um, I mentioned one example, and the other example is if you're a business and you happen to have like something you're passionate about, you could apply for the community leaders grant if you're doing this work outside of your business. So if you're going outside of your business to partner with some other nonprofit or some other group of people, then in that case, if it's not tied to your business and what you're doing on the community side for your business, then you can apply for the community leaders grant if it's separate from that. I'm not sure if I'm being super clear. But like I'm saying, it's only very few instances where you can apply for both. I know a couple people might have put some questions. Please, I will get to you at some point, so I promise. But the grants process. So the grant period is running from November 6th to March 1st, making Friday, March 1st at 11:59 p.m. the deadline. So definitely write that down somewhere. Friday, March 1st, 11:59 p.m. is the deadline for both the Community Leaders Grant and Neighborhood Business Grant. You can, once you end up submitting, what ends up happening next is my team and I are gonna go into our into our grant making cave, into our grant review cave, and we're gonna look at all of the applications and we're gonna create a docket, and that docket is going to be presented to our board in late June. And at that board meeting, we're basically going to be like, hey, these are the amazing groups and businesses that we want to fund, yay or nay. They typically give us the yay. And, soon thereafter, people should be getting their grant decision letters via email. So you can expect to hear back from us regarding a grant decision in late June, early July. So you can definitely write that down too. In late June, early July, you will be hearing from us regarding our grant decisions. And let's say you're one of the folks that ends up getting funded. Great, congrats. So basically the funds that you're gonna get is gonna, after you sign a grant agreement, shortly thereafter, we'll send the funds either via direct deposit or check. And once you get the money, that's when the grant period starts. So let's say you get the money July 2024, you have to finish your project or initiative by July 2025. And in June 2025, what we're going to do is we're going to send, the folks that were awarded a final report. And in this final report, you're going to tell us what went well, what didn't go well, what adjustments you had to make along the way when it came to your project. It's a very simple form that is basically asking narrative questions about how your project went, and we really just want to hear a good story about what took place, and things of the sort. So that ends up happening 1 year after you get the grant funds, and you have a month to complete the form, and plus it's relatively easy, I might say. So you must keep in mind that you can apply again every single year. So we encourage people to apply for this grant opportunity every single year, especially if folks ended up getting awarded. So yeah, if you definitely end up getting awarded, apply again, because the chances of you getting it the following year are a little higher. I wouldn't say guaranteed, but a little higher, because we know you're doing the work and we want to continue to support that work and that growth. So please apply again every single year. This will be available every single year. So let's go real quick into the grant writing best practices. So for the Community Leaders Grant, before I even get into that, I want to stress to everybody here, I don't expect any of you or anybody that interacts with our grant to be a grant writer. grant writing is a very specific, specialized skill that people quite literally go to school for and train for months and for years to like gain the skill and further sharpen it, right? It would be incredibly just hypocritical of us to say, hey, we want this application to be as simple as possible, but then we require everyone to have this very specific skill. No, like we don't expect anybody to be grant writers. We quite simply want you to talk to us like you were talking to a friend or a family member. I know when I have conversations with folks, they're able to tell me about their project very easily, and at the end of each talk I say, hey, like everything you just said, you could just put in your application. Literally everything you just told me, you can put in your application. So just talk about your project or your business like you were talking to a friend, right? That's really where everything should start when you're addressing the actual application. Because we did try to keep it relatively simple. For the community leaders grant, tell us about your group's mission and its goals. Tell us what inspired you to start this group. I know there are a lot of people with a lot of stories of why they started their nonprofits or why they started their community groups. Tell us about that. We want to hear about what motivated you to do what it is that you do. Tell us who you work with in the community, whether it's your partners or your volunteers. I know there are many people that are connected with other people that are interested in the same work. So tell us about them. If you're communicating with them, if you're collaborating with them, it just gives us a really good full picture of like, hey, this person is in the community and knows the issues very well and is an expert of their community. So that's we definitely want to hear about any folks that you work with. Tell us how you communicate with the community you serve. I heard the other day somebody like was like, hey, like the people that I serve for my project are seniors. Would I be penalized for using the grant funding, some of the grant funding for direct mailing? And I said, why would we penalize you for you knowing exactly who your audience is, right? This person clearly identified, hey, these are seniors that like this is the best way for them to get information, and this is how I'm going to give it to them. I can only commend that. So tell us how you communicate with the community you're serving. Give us a timeline of how your project will be carried out, and show us an itemized budget. That doesn't mean submit a complicated Excel spreadsheet. That doesn't mean that at all. What that does mean, though, is that you're just going to put what the funds are going to be spent on the application form. So all of that is going to be on the form. You don't have to bring in all this other external stuff. And the same thing applies for the neighborhood business grant in terms of the timeline and the itemized budget. All of that stuff is in the application. But transitioning into the neighborhood business grant, tell us about the community that you're located in, kind of like that person I mentioned earlier who was saying, hey, their community is very dirty. That's an example. Tell us about your business's history, services, customer base, goals. Tell us how community engagement is helping your neighborhood. And again, the timeline and budget are on the form. So I will very quickly. So what's going to happen next? And I'm going to need your engagement very soon. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through the scoring criteria for the community leaders grant. So this is what we use to grade them basically. And then after that, I'm going to go through two sample application responses for the community leaders grant and two responses for two questions for the neighborhood business grant. And what I want you to do after I read two for one program and two for the other one, in between, I want people to basically tell me, hey, what made this effective? When I read this aloud to you, and you read it too, because I know some people are on phones and it's very hard to read, so I'm going to read it out loud. So just tell me what like made us compelled to fund these projects or these businesses, right? So let's get started. I would very much like your engagement once we get to that part. So the scoring criteria for the Community Leaders Grants based on clarity. Applicants must describe their project and their goals clearly while showing their timeline for completion. Quality of life impact. Applicants must express how important their work is in the community. Community engagement. Applicants must show how engaging the community builds for the future. And need. Applicants show how their group/org is addressing a problem in the community. So I'm going to read these two questions really quick. Just keep in mind, these two questions are just two questions. There's actually a few more in the actual application, but we feel like these really give you a really good idea of what we expect in quality applications. So the first question here is, why is the project needed in your community? This project is needed in our community because it aims to address a common issue faced by cyclists: the lack of bike pumps and patch kits throughout the city. While there may be infrastructure for biking, the fear of getting stranded due to tire issues can deter people from choosing the sustainable mode of transportation. By providing free handheld pumps and patches at our DIY bike repair workshops, we hope to empower and support new bikers in our community. This will not only make biking more accessible, but also contribute to a greener and healthier city for all residents. So that's one. And two, how will the project conduct outreach to existing and new members in the project? Our project will conduct outreach through various channels, including partnerships with local environmental organizations such as City Growth and 360 Kings County. By sharing our free bike pumps and patch kits with their members, we hope to increase awareness and interest in our organization and promote biking as an ecological activity. Additionally, we will utilize social media platforms, advertise at our museum space in Manhattan, and distribute flyers in Brooklyn to reach out to existing members and attract new ones. This multi-pronged outreach approach will allow us to connect with a diverse audience and expand our impact within the community. So these are two of the handful of questions for the Community Leaders Grant. And I would love to hear, you can put it in the chat or you can get off mute, and we'd love to hear from you. You can feel free to just tell me what made my team say, hey, we want to fund this group.
Well, for one, they definitely follow the criteria that you have laid out as far as clarity, quality of life, impact, need, and community engagement. They pretty much address those things clearly.
Right, exactly. And they did it, they didn't have to say too much, right?
Right.
They basically just got to the point. They said, hey, this is the issue that we're facing, and this is what we're going to do about it. And this is why it's important.
Right. Clear and concise.
Right, exactly. Ivy Brown writes concise.
I was just going to add, they really cleared through the what, where, when, why, and how. They just basically address each one individually, and as well as collectively at the same time. So it answered every question that you could have possibly asked.
Right, exactly. Right. It's that gets to it as well. And to be honest with you, what struck me was when I first read this, I know cyclists. I've always been around cyclists. But I never thought of them as a community that is facing issues, right? And this is what this project does. It's saying, no, like, this is a community that, we're engaged in this, ecological activity. And we also know, like we're facing issues as a collective here, and we feel like we're necessary. So this is what we're going to do to encourage folks to do these things despite the obstacles that may be, that appear as a result of being a part of this community, right? This fear of being stranded. So absolutely. Yeah, thank you. And Margaret, thanks for both of your comments.
I would like to say it definitely sounds quite easier compared to a grant writing process,
Right.
which has held me back from many opportunities because I don't know how to do that.
Mhm.
So this sounds awesome. Thank you.
No, thank you so much for saying that. Like, I genuinely mean it when I say, like, you don't have to be a grant writer. Like, the best applications for me are the ones that do this, the ones that get straight to the point. And obviously, there are other questions in the application that are gonna like give you space to talk about like what your project is all about, like how you got to that point of even deciding to do this work. You're gonna have time to write all that, but really in the end, especially for these two questions about, you know, project and outreach, just get to it. And I also love like they got to telling us like, you know, these organizations that they work with alongside, right? And honestly, I actually um remix these in terms of they're not actual organizations. I just remix those as I put that together, but this is an actual, you know, application. But I do love that they list that they are in touch with other organizations that are interested in the same work, right? And we find that very valuable. They clearly know like who their audience is, and they know how to communicate to them. And that's really all we want to know at the end of the day. How are you reaching people, and how are you bringing this to people?
Are we allowed to, when we say work with a community, for example, are we allowed to work with schools, for
Yes,
example?
you can work. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, you can work with schools. There are people that there are businesses especially that collaborate with schools. There are nonprofits that collaborate with schools. Like I know one business that is trying to teach entrepreneurship through the publishing of a book. So this person is going into schools and you know, teaching kids how to publish a book, and at the end of it people get a copy of their book that they made, and all in the name of like teaching financial literacy and entrepreneurship to folks, right? So you can indeed partner with schools. That's actually encouraged.
Uh,
Hi,
uh, Go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify. Thank you so much for the presentation.
Mhm.
But I was wondering, so for for the neighborhood business grant and for the community leaders grant, it opens every year around November and it closes
Yeah.
in March.
Yeah, so we typically open in the fall and we typically close in the spring.
Okay, and for the thank you. And for the neighborhood business grant, like let's say for next year, would the date change in terms of like you mentioned that
Oh,
it's
for the in operation buy,
yeah.
we're gonna try our best. Our hope is to bump that up a couple years. But we're not sure yet. But we do hear you, and we are gonna try our best to bump that up for next year.
And I was thank you. And I was also wondering, for like through the citizens committee, are there any like I know we're focusing on these specific grants, but are there any grants, micro grants tailored to startups? Um,
No, I don't know of any of those resources. What I do suggest is probably talking to people at like NYC Business Solutions. They might be able to help you. Those folks are very informed about opportunities and anything business. They're obviously more qualified than I am when it comes to that. So that's the most I can give you on that front.
Thank you.
Hi, good
Folks, I
evening.
want to leave the questions for a little later because I want to get through the neighborhood business grant example really quickly, if that's okay. I just want to get through, you know, this example so we can get to questions. And I will get through this relatively quickly. So for the neighborhood business grant, we're going to grade on need. Applicants must show that their business is addressing a problem in their community with a clear plan. Quality of life impact. Applicants must express how important their work is in the community. Relevance and urgency. Applicants must express why their business is suited to address a problem and grant funding makes a difference. Applicants must provide a budget to show impact grant will make. So this one is a little longer, but bear with me. Why? And by the way, for the folks that asked, I did see your question. You will be getting a copy of the slides and the presentation sometime tomorrow afternoon. So I have everybody's email. Everybody that RSVP'd, whether they attended or did not attend, will get a part of the recording and the slides. So you will get that some point tomorrow afternoon. So question one, why is the project needed in your community? Lower Manhattan is changing. People from across the country and other parts of the world are moving here. Although we welcome newcomers, we acknowledge their presence means our neighborhood is undergoing a shift. This makes it important for Big Little Tea Spot to become a cultural hub for tea in Chinatown, because it not only enhances the business operations, but also allows for better promotion of Chinese culture and traditions in a neighborhood that is rapidly changing. We look at our neighborhood as an opportunity to preserve what gives it its character. By providing educational content about Chinese teas and traditions, the store can attract more visitors and increase brand awareness, ultimately expanding its customer base. Moreover, by upgrading their storefront and incorporating freelance designers that live in the neighborhood, the packaging and overall aesthetic of the store will also improve, making it more appealing to customers. With these enhancements in place, Big Little Tea Spot can serve as a cultural institution where people not only purchase tea, but also leave with a greater understanding of Chinese tea culture and its impact globally. Second question, how will your business conduct outreach to the community in support of your project? Big Little Tea Spot plans to conduct outreach to the community in various ways to support their project. One way they will do this is by hiring creators to produce educational content about Chinese teas and traditions. This content can be shared through social media platforms and on the store's website, reaching a wider audience beyond just those who visit the physical store. Additionally, they plan to upgrade their storefront, which will attract more visitors and garner attention from passersby. This can also serve as a way for the store to interact with the local community and promote their cultural mission. Furthermore, Big Little Tea Spot may host events or workshops focused on Chinese culture, inviting members of the community to participate and learn more about our traditions. By actively engaging with the community, Big Little Tea Spot can establish itself as a cultural hub in Chinatown and generate support for their project. So, folks, any thoughts on, what made this effective for, making us say, hey, we want to fund this? You can also put it in the chat.
I'd say basically it's the same thing, it addresses each issue and is clear and explaining, the purpose and how it will be beneficial to the community.
Mhm.
So yeah, it addresses all of the different issues of concern.
Right, exactly. This one also gets to it, but one of the things that I love is that it's telling me about Lower Manhattan, and it only does it in 3 short sentences, right? They're telling me Lower Manhattan is changing, and it's changing to a point where this business feels like they need to make a change. Like they need to go from being not just a business, they need to go from being a business to more of a cultural center, because they see they see their business as having the mission of being a cultural preservationist. Like, we're welcoming the new folks that are moving in, but we want to show them that, hey, this neighborhood has a legacy that's been built by many Chinese immigrants and Chinese Americans. So we want to be the preservers of this culture despite all of the changes that are happening, right? So at the end of the day, these the business owners of this, of this tea shop don't want you to leave the business with just a cup of tea, right? They want you to leave with an education of where the tea comes from, and they want you to learn about its health benefits, right? So it's very clear to me that they want to make this transition in the hopes of you know, getting the community more involved in the process of, you know, making this more of a cultural center. Shiliza writes, I hope I pronounce your name correctly, very specific, absolutely. Succinctly telling a story, Ivy Brown, yes. Keyword, succinctly. They didn't have to write me a dissertation, right? This is to the person's point about grant writing, like it's yeah, we just need you to get to the point, but you can also tell us a story, and it doesn't have to be super drawn out. They can get to the point too. Josaphat writes, it is also quite evocative. I feel compelled to visit the shop and try their teas. Exactly. That's how I felt too. I felt the same exact way. It's like, yeah, I need to visit this place. Thank y'all. So I want y'all to take down my email. I'm gonna put it in the chat. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me there. Obviously, I will answer questions now. In the meantime, I would love for y'all to do this quick survey, just to tell me how I did. If I talk too much or I talk too little, I highly doubt you say I talk too little. But feel free to be honest. We genuinely do love the feedback, and we try to listen to what folks tell us. So, I'm gonna put it in the chat. And like I said, folks, y'all are gonna get the slides, so don't worry about it. You won't lose touch. Any other questions? I know folks had questions, so this is your time.
I have a question.
Go for it.
Good evening. Thank you so much, Carlos, for your presentation. It was very informative. So my question is, if I'm working with a parents association organization, number one, would that qualify for the leadership grant opportunity? And then the second question is, if it does qualify, do I have to have the programming targeting the full community, or can it specifically target the children who are attending that specific public school?
Answer to question one is yes. And answer to the second question is it's up to y'all to tell us what community means in the context of your project, right? I mentioned Khan Body before. The community that they're helping are formerly incarcerated individuals, right? In your case, it's a public school, and that is a community. There's hundreds of people in a school, sometimes thousands. So it's a community. You can apply for a community leader grant. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions?
Hi, Carlos. My name is Branum Tasnuva, and I'm from the South Asian Women Project. It's a nonprofit based in Queens.
Mm-hmm.
So I asked two questions because I was looking through the application and noticed that the application require, excuse me, a primary and a secondary contact. Now, in my organization, I definitely have staff member who can be the primary and secondary contact. But I also see in that application that it asks for primary contacts, home address, and also their social media information. So my question is it necessary to use our personal information, or since we are a 501c3 organization, should we use that information on the application?
It's really up to you. If you want to use the office address, I'm not going to stop you. So you can go ahead and use the office address. I would suggest the way I would look at the primary contact, field is in terms of the address stuff. Just look at it this way. Let's say I don't know which one you would choose, but let's say as a hypothetical, we gave you a grant, right? You would have to choose. You would basically have to choose whether you want it via check or direct deposit. What I would basically tell you is write the address that a check would possibly go to, even if you don't choose check as an option. But just use the address that you would like say, hey, like send me a check there. So just use that address.
I mean, we usually use our office address for any like, you know, business purpose. So I can also add my information, but I don't know how the other staff would feel comfortable or not. That's why that's something I wanted to clarify with you.
It's really up to you. It doesn't matter which one you put, you're not going to be penalized. It's really like if like what we want you to get right. And there is a section of that in the application that has the website information is tell us like, you know, what districts your nonprofit is based in, like the government district, whether it's your assembly district, city council district, things of the sort. So you can put the office address and just give me all of that information, and all of that is in the application.
Okay, so it not necessarily like where we are particularly running these projects, but more of like where we are based.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
I am looking at your second question that you had before about it being virtual. That's fine so long as you're communicating to us that you're serving New Yorkers. That's basically the most important thing that we're trying to get at, basically.
Okay, great. I got you. Thank you so much.
So if that's the case, you're good. No, if it's virtual, that's fine. Like it's you're helping New Yorkers, so you're good.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't see this person's name because this is being weird. Simone Gamble writes, are there particular initiatives that do better than others, i.e. education, youth work, job development? No, to be honest with you, it really comes down to how someone is communicating a need. It really comes down to communicating that. I wouldn't say there are some projects that do better than others. It's really going to come down to how folks are communicating things on an application. So if you're telling us very clearly and succinctly why this is necessary in your community, I think you got a good shot. But I don't necessarily think, there's any ones that we lean on. Like, we genuinely don't. And thank you, Ivy. I appreciate you. I hear Kananda, you have another question? If not, Helen can go.
Yes, I'm sorry. I had a difficult time unmuting myself. Okay, so my next question has to do with the separation of projects. So if, for instance, I wanted to do a sports and arts project and it involved different sports and arts, would that be considered one project, or would I have to list them separately? For instance, for example, if I wanted to start a karate program and then also wanted to do dance classes within the school, would I have to list those separately, or could I just say that they're part of one program?
I would say in your case, this is part of one program. I would say in your case.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I would say in your case is one project, but that is a good question. Absolutely. Helen, go for it.
Hi, thank you, Carlos, for all this wonderful information.
Absolutely. Thank you for attending.
Thank you. I do have an additional question. And aside from the nonprofits or soon to be nonprofits that I'm working on, I'm also part of a Kiwanis club that has a new chapter in the Rockaways, which is Queens. They haven't gotten the 501c3, but it is part of a larger, I guess, what is it, like a club? Would they be able to apply for the leadership? Because
is the budget under 150K?
Oh my goodness, the budget is whatever we can find. It's probably under 5.
So if it's under that, then you're good.
Oh, okay,
That's fine. If
wonderful.
it's
I just
under
wanted
that,
to
it's
know.
good. It's basically what we are trying to avoid when it comes to the some of the eligibility requirements is like
Mhm.
big organizations. We're trying to reach people at the grassroots level. So obviously in your case, like it's fine. Like you're this is a grassroots organization, so you're good.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, Helen. Thank you. Simone writes, last question, does the initiative have to be currently serving the community, or can it be funding for an initiative that aims to shift the program to directly serve your community? Can you explain that a little more?
Yeah, so the program that I am applying with, it was to serve young people throughout New York City, but I know it has to be very community specific. So I wanted to shift it to just serve the young people in our NYCHA building.
That's
So
fine.
okay, gotcha.
I don't see an issue with that at all. That's fine.
Because it's not doing it currently, so I didn't know if that disqualified.
No. If it's like I said, it's up to y'all to define what community is. If the community that you're trying to serve is NYCHA youth, you're good. You're good. Yeah, you're fine.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw someone, Ra.
Hi, good evening. Yes.
Good evening.
So my question, thank you for all the information.
Mhm.
And so my question was, we have an organization that promotes plant-based nutrition in the Bronx. And so we started in 2020, but didn't get the business details like the EIN and stuff until this year.
You're good. You can still apply.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're good. You're still good. Don't worry. You started in 2020. That's all we care about. All the other details, that's for other grant makers that will ask way more questions than we do. So you're good.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Are resident councils eligible to the grants as well? We do a lot of events for our residents. Yeah, we have resident councils, block associations. Yeah, go for it. I hope that answers your question, Dana. You definitely can. All right, folks, we're over time, which is fine. This is my job, so I ain't in a rush to leave, but I'm pretty much done. I ain't got nothing else for y'all. But thank you so much for coming out. I appreciate everybody that showed. You know, yeah, that I'm overwhelmed. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. I hope everybody has a wonderful evening. You know, again, I'm gonna put it in the chat again. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me. And yeah, I'll get back to you. You know, folks are getting to me, you know, especially with the deadline coming up March 1st. You know, it's been crazy, people reaching out to me, but still reach out. It's perfectly okay. So it's, oh wow, thank you. I'm glad I wasn't boring. So I try to make it at least somewhat engaging for folks. So I'm glad to hear that. But thank you, folks. I hope you have a really good one more time. Let me just put it in. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Everyone, yeah. So expect to get the slides and the recording sometime tomorrow. Yep, you're gonna get it. You definitely have it. You're good. We have you down, Flynn. So we're good. All right, have a good evening, everybody. Bye.